G'day Sydney options traders. We're looking at the /GC, which is the gold market. We're going to use it for a case study for looking at our end-on-end analysis using the halfway back trading method, and we're going to just highlight this area from about April, and we're going to compare this area here, this uptrend, with this uptrend here, and we're going to introduce to you the concept of extensions and anchors. So initially we're just going to move in to this zone, highlight it, and we'll adjust the axis here just to give you the optimum viewing. Now from this low we're going to draw our fib line. First click, we're going to move up to what we see as the high, and note after we second click that there is a retracement to our 50% area. So a basic trade plan at this point would be to enter a bullish position at the 50%, have a stop at the 618, and a profit target at the -23. Now for our end-on-end analysis though, we want to see how the underlying, the /GC, is moving according to the halfway back trading method. So we're going to have a look at a second series of measured moves. So we draw from what was the 50% pullback area, which is now the new low, and we're going to draw to the new high, which is up here. We click on that, we get rid of our previous fib just to avoid confusion, and you'll notice here we have a pullback. We go from the lows to a new high, pullback into the 50% retracement area, and we have a hit on the -23. Now if we do that again, we go for a third series of measured moves. Then we're going to go from the low to the high. Now we have a new high here, so we'll press on that. Oh, just pressed a bit early there. So we'll click on the high, get rid of our previous one, and you'll note here that as we go up and pull back, if we had a trade plan to enter, we would be stopped out here at the 618, and we haven't reached, and we don't reach. Well, that becomes invalid once we've been stopped out on our -618. So on that trend up we had a series of measured moves. Now we're going to pan back out to this second uptrend area. Now we'll note here, this is the significant low. We draw our first click and we move up. Now notice as we keep going to the highs, keep going to the highs, keep going to the highs, we have no pullback, and we still are yet to have a pullback. So in this scenario we're to conclude that because we haven't had a halfway back from the lows, that perhaps there was an extension. Now an extension is actually drawn from a high to another high. Now the more detailed way to do it is to actually go back into the small time frames and see what that particular high is. But what we're going to do here is just do a lazy method of, say, look at that high, move to that high, and see where the pullback kicks in, and that's where a -23% target is. Now the rationale behind that is that the programs would have linked an extension, which is from a high to a high, and then bought from that extension. Now notice if they were linked to the low to the high, it never would have pulled back into a buy area. So we have what we call an extension, a high to a high to a pullback to a negative 23% target. Now, if we go from that low and draw up, we have from the highs another measured move. So if we draw from there to the high, notice here there is actually another pullback right there. So we've moved into, we start off with an extension, and then we've moved into a series of measured moves end on end. Now, once we pull from this low, and we draw, and we draw, notice we now don't have a pullback from any highs. So the clue is there that perhaps there is some extensions again in play. Now, where is a significant buying part after this high? You'll notice here this long tail was a significant buy point for a lot of people. So could it be that that was the area of the extension? So if we draw from, just pick up again where our previous measured move was, perhaps rather than from that low, perhaps it was this area here. And lo and behold, that's where they bought. So it seems that that was a significant area. Now once we move from there, we go up to a high, could it be again that the extension has been continued? Can't find any more measured moves at this point. But there could be from that high there. Ooh. You can see just a little bit there. That could be the next extension. We'd have to look at a small time frame to see if that's precise. But you'll note that when the market is really trending there, that the pullbacks aren't enough for a halfway back, a standard measured move. So we look for the extensions. Now, looking at this larger area here, there's no pullbacks, no pullbacks, no pullbacks. Could it be that on that larger time frame there is a big extension to buy into this zone? If we go back to a significant high, what do you find? You find an area that perhaps programs were attached to all the way back there, or perhaps that was the significant high. And once again, you'd have to do some more detailed analysis in the small time frames, but we're trying to keep it just to the daily. And you can see that from a high to a high to the low there to the negative 23% target. Perhaps that's what attachment areas that the programs are attached to. And you can see that with that significant buying, down here, there's obviously some buying in those programs. So it would have been a very attractive risk reward if we were to enter at the 50%, even on some of those retests, have a stop at the negative 618, and then have our profit target at the negative 23. Now this is the last point we want to introduce, that with these extensions there's an interesting phenomena that happens on occasion called anchors. Now when we have that negative 23% target hit, on occasion, when we draw from that same extension point to the next high, we have often a buying point there. Now this action here is what we call an anchor, where programs keep that same high after a negative 23% target has been hit. They keep that same high to draw from to go to the new. And it seems like there has been a buy. Now does that mean that negative 23% target would be hit? Well, I would have thought so at this point here. But now that there's been a pullback, well, the jury's still out. But it is still valid on the basis of this anchor. But there's been some strong buying there. That was a negative 23% on the previous extension, so this anchor is still in play. Normally with extensions though, you do want to see them hit in the first thrust. It is hard for them to come back once they have had a significant pullback. But we'll leave it at that. So we've looked at a series of measured moves, end on end. We've looked at the concept of extensions, and we've done a little introduction on the concept of extension anchors. Hopefully this is helpful. You are able to reach me on sydneyoptionstrader @gmail.com if you've got any questions. Thanks so much for your interest. Bye.